Yep, okay. Ready? Kelly, you ready?
I am, yes.
Call to order the December 20th Communications Committee. Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Blaine Thomas. All members present.
You. Next item is the approval of the agenda. Have you all had a chance to look at it? No?
Yep.
We'll approve by acclamation. Then moving on to citizen comments. If anyone in the audience or online would like to make a comment to this committee as it relates to communications, you'll be able to either let in through Zoom or come to the podium.
Hand raised and nobody's attending.
Right, and we'll have citizen comments again at the end, so. Next is the report of the committee chair and members. First, I'd just like to say thank you for making the second meeting, and thank you to BOLA for adding all of the topics on for tonight, and I think it'll be a good start of some good discussion, so that's all I have. Alderman Plufka?
No report.
Blaine?
No report.
Great. Next up is the city administrator report. BOLA, is that something we're taking up now or in the
No,
items?
I pulled that up and realized that the attachment that's under city administrator report should really be under
The new business.
H, yeah. H2.
H,
So I'm trying to move it there, and maybe by the time we get there, it'll be there.
okay.
But under city administrator report, I have nothing.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so next on the item, agenda is the consent agenda. Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes from last meeting? So I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Okay, voice vote, I guess, for that, Kelly? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Going on to old business, G1, request for qualification for communications survey. Bola, are you taking this?
Yes, so the update is that in the first quarter of next year, we will draft and issue the RFP, RFQ.
Okay,
So it's just the update.
okay, great,
Can I ask a quick question about it?
absolutely.
So, as part of the RFP, will we have a hand in drafting the questions that are part of that questionnaire?
No,
Okay. Is there some way that in the RFP then we can make it clear that what we're trying to accomplish is not so much it's not so much a survey of how popular or how good or bad the city is communicating with its constituents, but more, this is what we talked about at the first meeting. We really, if we're going to do this, I'd really like us, and I think the committee would like us to find out more about how the city consumes information. Do they go to the website? How frequently do they go to the website? Not questions about how well does the website serve you. What I would like to see are questions about, how often do you use the website? When you do, what are the elements of the website that you use the most? The calendar, whatever. But to get at more a function of how Brentwood constituents gain information from the city, not so much about how effectively we're doing it. I mean, I really think, at least that's my position on this, that what I'd like to see is a questionnaire that focuses more on gaining an understanding of how our citizens get information, so that as we go through this process of perhaps changing things, that we're doing it with an eye toward, helping to provide information in a way that is being used or that intends to be used by residents of the city of Brentwood in a majority fashion.
I mean, I think that's fair for sure. I think in addition to that, it's how finding out and getting a sense for how they would like to see communications come to them, meaning what methods are they most comfortable using or seeing from a majority standpoint, so that then we know strategically as we get into allocating funds towards certain platforms that we know that they're going to be successful platforms.
So the intent of the RFP is to select a provider that you all can interview if you want, and then you all can communicate that directly
Great.
to the
Wonderful.
provider, and then that person will draft those questions.
Terrific.
Great. Comments on that?
No.
Okay, great. So you don't need any action on that, that's just an update?
Information.
Okay. Item 2, mission and purpose of the Communications Committee and presentation to the board, in the full board in January.
Right, so we will be presenting it at that time.
You all don't have any other changes or amendments to any of that since the last meeting, correct?
I think it's great. I mean,
Okay.
that's my personal opinion. I think that what's here is concise, well-drafted.
All right, moving on to new business. Meeting date changes. So originally, when we took this up at the last meeting, there was some confusion, mostly on my part, that I recognized that the Ward 3 meeting is always the last Tuesday of the month. Sometimes that's the fourth Tuesday, and sometimes that's the fifth Tuesday, depending on the month. And so when we had a motion to accept the fourth Tuesday, I had it in my head it was the third Tuesday, and then it kind of got confused. So I'd like to consider that I asked to put this back on so that we can discuss these dates. There are some dates that are flagged here with an asterisk that have some conflicts. And actually, some of them may not be conflicts now for at least the Ward 3 meeting, so we could potentially leave them as they are. So January 24th, February 28th, and June 27th are meetings that I'd like to consider. The first of the two, January and February, do not have conflicts with Ward 3, so I don't know if there's conflicts with other meetings. So anyway, I'd like to be able to open this back up for discussion and then approve our yearly dates moving forward. The only other conflict that I had that I noticed is June 27th. I think it was June 27th. I believe I'll be, June 13th, which was the offered date. I'll be out of the country, so I won't be able to chair that.
I have a
Go ahead.
question.
Sure, go ahead.
So it says third Tuesday proposed, but the dates in red are the second Tuesday.
Well, the
only-
10th, the 14th, sorry, go ahead. 10th, 14th, and the 13th.
Starred ones are the second Tuesday because they conflict with the Board of Aldermen meetings, because those board meetings are typically held on Monday, but because of the holiday, we have to hold the board meeting on Tuesday, which would conflict with communications. So we went the week ahead on those 3 dates.
So in the instance where it conflicted with the third week Board of Alderman meeting, we shifted it to the second Tuesday. Okay.
But again, if the 24th is available and still fine with everyone, January is one of those weird ones where our actually Ward 3 meeting, because it's the last Tuesday of the month, it actually falls on Tuesday the 31st. So our Ward 3 meeting actually won't be until the 31st. So we could keep the 24th as is for January. And, personally, I'd prefer that we did that since we're meeting now and then we go into a holiday. We may not have a whole lot of items on the agenda between now and the 10th of January. So it gives us a few more weeks to let things play out a little bit more. And then likewise on February 28th, I don't know why we won't have a Ward 3 meeting because we're going to do it every other month. And the only concern I had with moving it to the 14th was it's Valentine's Day. Some people would probably want to have an evening with their Valentine. So I guess I'd entertain a motion to accept the dates that aren't starred and keep the dates that we can that
There's another date on there that I'd like to check with Jason on, December 26th.
okay.
We might
Yeah.
be closed.
Be moved to the 19th.
It would be moved to the 19th.
Okay.
Yep,
Does not start.
and I like that move.
I'll make that motion to adopt the dates in red that aren't starred as the meeting dates in 2023. I'll make that motion.
Okay, Kelly, is that sufficient for you? I guess voice vote is fine with this?
So will it be June 27th and not June 13th?
Yes,
Okay.
unless that's conflicting
No,
with something
no,
other
no,
than.
no, that's
okay.
fine. I just
So
asked.
we'll keep the dates that are starred as they are.
As they are, and all the rest that
All the
are in
rest would-
red, we will change.
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Thank you.
that was more painful than it needed to be, but we got the whole year set, so that's good. Okay, item 2 under new business, presentation of City of Brentwood's communication assets for awareness, discussion, overview, cost, and data. I asked that this be, that BOLA, and I'm guessing with help with our Janet, our communications manager, to put together a comprehensive list of all communication, what we consider quote-unquote communication opportunity and asset for the city, because it came to my awareness that, especially with you, Blaine, on the not being involved in the city on any other committees, that we don't know what we don't know. So it would be a good level set to hear everything, and then probably leading into an RFQ for a survey would probably be valuable for that RFQ as well. So who's taking?
So Janet has prepared a list of all the city's communication assets for your review. We have uploaded that into board docs. We are constantly reminding ourselves to speak, Larry, thank you, to speak into the microphone. So Janet, if you would like to just go through the list if you want her to, and
I
then.
think it'd be great, and
Okay.
especially for anybody who might be listening to this, be good to know, for them to know.
Yeah, sure. So I just put together, based on the communication committee's request, to know how the city communicates. Always a good thing to know. The first few items are the platforms that we pay for. So we have Archive Social, which is a platform that archives our social media content. And as a public agency, we need to make sure we're maintaining records. So if there are public record requests on social media communications and interactions, we've got those archived. The next item is Civic Plus. That is our host for our website and our mobile app. That's an annual cost. That was the $17,150 was the fiscal year 2022 cost. And then the next item I listed is MailChimp. That's what we use for our email marketing, our weekly e-newsletter. Right now that we're spending $11 a month. That's going to go up to $13 a month next year. And depending on, our growth in audience, that could be that ultimately increased a cost, but quite affordable. Sprout Social is our social media management platform we're using. So we have an account for the city's social media accounts, and then Parks and Recreation has a Sprout Social account too. So it provides really great data and analytics. It's really helpful for us to, I'm looking at that frequently. It's a nice supplement to the insights and analytics that are available on the native platforms. So it just really helps to see kind of what our audience is looking like with each different post.
And, real quick, so Archive Social, I just want, for those listening, that is only our owned channels that we archive any social activity for the city. It doesn't include community Facebook pages that are set
Facebook
up.
page,
The community
next door.
Facebook page is not, the
Correct.
city
I
is
just wanted-
not responsible for that. So that's not something that we work with.
Okay. And then what about social channels like Nextdoor that we do have an account?
Yeah, Nextdoor is not currently on not archivable.
Okay,
So, yeah.
okay,
And that's a channel we use a lot.
great. And then as far as Sprout Social goes, do we also get the data and analytics? Do other municipalities around here use them? Do we have benchmarks to know how we're doing versus social activity that other municipalities are?
I have a great network locally and a great network nationally with government communicators. So everyone, I talk with people who are using Sprout Social and other platforms, and really just we're constantly communicating about it. Yeah, really, social media and social posts are really I consider every social media post an experiment. You never know what's going to happen.
Right.
You just do your best. You try it. See what the reaction is. Again, depending on what the content is and what your intention is. Especially the volatility of social media. Twitter, is it going to be here tomorrow? We don't know. So we're constantly looking at what's out there, what's working. We have Facebook. The algorithm is constantly changing. It seems like every week it looks different when I log in and manage the pages. So, yeah, ever changing, and that's why it's really important to stay really aware of what's happening and have a great network with others that are dealing with the same issues.
So this goes in cycles. When I first moved to the St. Louis area, a lot of the municipalities had communications managers. And then we went away from that. And now it seems like cities are, for the last several years, have now started creating those positions and having communications, because they're beginning to see the value of that. The city of Brentwood didn't always, I don't think that was the title, but we had like a video / some person that was helping at that time. And so because of the communications committee that we had, we were able to make a presentation to the board, hence we have Janet here. But the city of Brentwood was one of the early adopters of Archive Social. Not a lot of cities had that. And Archive Social puts out an annual report that gives data, statistics on which one of the social media platforms are working well for municipalities. For instance, TikTok. Most municipalities have not adopted that. And from what I read, it's doubtful that they will.
And those who have are getting off of it because that's the way with the government,
Security issues.
it's,
Right.
major security issues. So.
But there's different reports that we use to benchmark against others. What can we do better? What are we doing better? So those tools exist for us.
Yeah, there's great data. There's so much data and information.
Alderman Fluffer, you had a
I
question?
do. How do we attract followers to our Facebook page, to our Twitter account, to our LinkedIn account, subscribers to the YouTube channel? How do we do that?
Well, I think, we share our social media links in multiple avenues. Also, when we look at data and analytics, you know, sure, we can talk about the followers we have, and I listed those just as a kind of an easy, basic piece of information. But followers is not necessarily the best data to go with. Like you can have a ton of followers, but are they actually seeing your posts? Are they engaged? And so there's really a lot more to it. So there's things you can do, like we could put a little money into it and boost posts or have paid advertising in social media platforms. It really just depends on what, and we've done that depending on whatever the particular campaign we're needing to do, especially when we did.
Tax, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. So especially when,
Bound.
the use tax, a lot of information related to Brentwood Bound during the informational phase of that, and then leading up to the informational phase, leading up to the proposition. So you can look at followers, but that's really just a basic piece of information. It's helpful, but, and we certainly want to appeal to as many people as we can, but we have our links to the social media, and pretty much every other communication channel that we're using.
So what criteria do you use to make a decision as to whether to boost a particular post?
It would be something that, we haven't done it recently. I know Parks and Recreation does it more because they're trying to get attendance and they're trying to fill programs. So they use it a lot more than perhaps we do on the city side. But I would say the most recent, it'd be something that, if we have a big meeting coming up that we want people to know about, or we have a big event that we want to make sure that, as many people are aware of it as possible, that would be something that we would consider.
Generally speaking, how expensive is it to boost?
It depends on, again, what kind of reach you want. It could be like $5. It could be $25. Like it depends on what, how the length of time and how many audience members you're trying to reach.
Good questions, and is that, I mean, obviously, since those are smaller dollar amounts, that's something that you just directly approve?
Right, we
is that
can,
right?
they don't meet the purchasing
Right.
limit
So you
where
can
I need to
just-
take it to the board.
You can,
And there
you can
are-
act on the speed of the internet. And
Exactly.
Make sure
Yeah, and especially, it's like with Facebook, boosting posts on Facebook, there are parameters and there are period, depending again what you are trying to promote. Like if it's a ballot issue, there are a lot of criteria that you have to adhere to follow.
Do you have any kind of a working budget for this on an annual basis? Like, do you have $500 set aside for,
yeah.
boosting this kind of
For
thing?
social media, yeah, it would be within our community services budget. It's so minimal.
Okay.
And I think, again,
We wouldn't call it out specifically, but it's in there.
Because it's not a frequent thing. Even if it was more frequent, and we knew, like, we foresaw something happening, like, I could foresee in 2023, we would probably choose to boost or really see what we can do to maximize our communication about any grand openings for our Brentwood Bound.
I was just gonna say, so we're
projects.
gonna have a lot of dedications
Oh,
in the
yeah.
coming year.
Yeah, we've got some big events planned for next year.
Got it. And that'd be
So-
the kind of thing where you would,
Yeah, I mean, and again, and as far as like budgeting for any marketing kind of collateral, like boosting Facebook posts or social media posts, it's
Minimal cost.
pretty minimal. Yeah,
thank you.
good question.
Yeah, I have a quick question. When, as we're starting to think through how to communicate to residents best, and we look at our social media channels, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, insert whatever social media channel it is, when we look back at the year, do we get a gauge of, okay, so say, we had random number, 100,000 impressions on our total posts. Of those 100,000 impressions, 60,000 were geolocated into the Brentwood area, and the other 40,000 were people who had clicked follow when they lived here and they've moved away and they've been gone for 10 years. Do we have that level of detail?
Well, and I think especially that's why I really am happy with Sprout Social, because it's such robust data.
Yeah.
It's really helpful. And again, from the day to day, I can check day to day or week to week how it's doing. And, that it's not necessarily going to guide strategy, for like the next year, but at least it kind of gives just a good, kind of in the moment, like what worked well then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
And just kind of that made me think, your thought question made me think of, with our our official city social media channels, we really, we want them to be residents or businesses, people who really are connected to Brentwood in some way. If they live here, they work here, they shop here, they have a business here. I know, there are other community groups that may, like I think there's a community Facebook group that may look like they have a lot more followers, but are they, not necessarily in Brentwood. So I think, again, we want, the world to know about Brentwood, so.
I think
Far
that
and wide.
strategy might change a little bit when the park is done, Brentwood Park, and the development is done.
Yeah,
So that the reach is
To follow up on
further.
Blaine's point, how often does it just provide you those kinds of reports on an annual basis, or is it monthly, or is it
I can go in
on
there
demand?
I can go every day and check on every single post, and we can, I can use it I can schedule posts. I don't, I can schedule posts, but I can check, just how every post is doing. And again,
I mean, that's a great
for
question.
what it's worth,
Okay.
but it's really good data.
Okay.
But I mean, you could have the same post. It could, you posted at a certain time of day or a certain day a week, and you did the same thing a different time of day. It could be totally different. So I think that's just, again, it's sort of experimenting. You're just kind of seeing what's going to work.
I mean, I think as we continue to go on, that might be something that this committee, maybe on a quarterly basis or something, we have a report that we can kind of see and keep track of some things. I think that goes to my question about benchmarking how our social activity is in engagement, because I totally agree with you, Janet, in that it's not necessarily how many followers you have, but actually how many people actually click on it or see it or watch the video that's there. Those are the really important metrics.
Right.
And I'd love to know, for example, how is Webster performing on their social channels, and are they getting more engagement on certain things, and can we, I'm throwing that out as just an example, but.
And we, again, my local and national colleagues, we are frequently talking about, just, and social media is just one small aspect
Yes,
of communication.
and
and
we
again,
could get through this.
that's why we want to diversify. We don't, if we only did social media, that would not be very smart. So that's, and I kind of just to go along with different analytics, we have Sprout Social for our social media channels that are covered, obviously not like next door, but with our website, there are analytics with that too. And the analytics platform actually changed a year ago. So it's now, so a year ago, January 1st, actually changed to a sort of a proprietary Google Analytics platform. So that's been a nice change. Yeah. Yeah, so so then I kind of outlined just so you all know, kind of just a different, we have our website, we have the Brentwood Bound website, which is really a microsite of the city's site, but it's its own site. Then we have the city on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. I also manage the police department, Facebook, Twitter. We have our YouTube channel, Nextdoor. We have our quarterly newsletter, which is still done the old-fashioned way as far as printed and mailed, but it gets to about over 4,100 households. And also, again, post that online, and we push that out to all of our social media channels, too. And then we have a weekly e-newsletter, and that's been a great way to really, a more frequent way to really bring a lot of information, all sorts of information to our residents and community members.
That's one that in our last ward meeting, we made sure people knew, well, one, we pulled up the app and
Yeah.
Pet showed my
Yes.
phone, and I said, this is
Download
really
the-
important.
yes.
And they downloaded it right there on in the meeting, and then others were asking about how to sign up for the e-newsletter. So I think more we can push that.
It's been growing every week, which
Outreach.
is really great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and then I put direct mail in there because direct mail is still important too. We want to, and like it could be even more important in the coming years with just the question about how social media is going to be looking in the next year, the next week, next year or two. So really, direct mail needs to be, is a part of what we do when needed, and our mobile app, which you've already mentioned. And I think it's really impressive that for a city of this size, we have a mobile app. I get a lot of comments from other municipalities saying like, I can't believe you have something like that. And a city of 8,000 people. So, and then public engagement opportunities, any opportunities we have to interact with the public is an opportunity to communicate. And so to share updated information at our monthly Coffee with the Mayor events. The mayor is able to share a lot of information with the constituents who attend. We have public meetings, obviously, like this one, and other community events throughout the year. So all different opportunities to communicate with people. We have the Pulse monthly newspaper, and we provide a lot of information that goes in there each month. So again, if anybody who's reading the local newspaper, that's their chance to get some information too. Media relations, obviously, we've been in the news frequently, so sometimes we
Janet does an excellent job in
Sometimes we can't
navigating
stay.
that, and we should give kudos to Mayor Dimmitt because he has done a phenomenal job as the city's spokesperson. He doesn't turn anyone down, no matter who it is. He will engage and make himself available at a moment's notice to the reporters.
So we've had, some really great stories this past year, and I foresee some really great opportunities for stories in the next year. Hopefully, as positive as can be.
The fact that the city has, live streaming and video, you notice that we don't see reporters sitting in the meeting because they could easily just go afterwards and watch the meeting and get all the information they want. They just need a quote afterward, or maybe they just need someone on camera. So this has worked very well, and we're seeing more and more of our neighboring communities investing in technology so that they can do that. And Larry Covey here has been instrumental in helping others do that.
Right, and media relations is is constantly changing too. We have, the traditional news release, but really it's reporters tuning into live streams and reporters, on social media, and what are we tweeting about, and then they'll contact us. So I think, again, we're really utilizing a diverse array of communication tools. I also included Code Red, our alert and notification system. Again, it's another way for residents and community members, businesses, to sign up and opt in for, weather alerts, which, in the next couple days will probably be really helpful. And we also use it for other emergency alerts, or just something like if there's a major road closure. We've used that recently. So again, a great way to get information to a lot of people who have opted into that tool. And then Report a Concern, which is our MyGov request manager. That's another way for residents, community members to let us know about something. It's a report of concern, or just an issue, something that they've noticed. Their trash wasn't picked up. It's just another way they can give us a call, or they can just they can go online and report it that way as well. So yeah, and then I just also listed Brentwood Parks and Recreation, some of their tools that they're using. And again, their focus, and we work together a lot too. So, they have their programs and events that they're focusing on, but also, especially with Brentwood Bound, we work together to collaborate on communication.
So can I ask a question about that? You said that you monitor the police department's social media, you don't provide the same oversight to the Parks Department?
I don't, because they have a person who,
Have a marketing
who
person.
is, who is,
Oh.
who's tasked with that.
Remember Amber? It's that role
There's been a couple people since then,
since then, yes.
but yeah,
I just don't remember her.
it's collaborative, yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed a social post from them the other day about a cat that was looking at the window, in the window. They had a visitor. So those are fun. I mean, even just kind of that social activity's interesting and fun.
Right.
I had a follow-up question on the Brentwood Bound site, the microsite that exists. Is that, what's the plan for that once our Brentwood Bound project is done? And is BrentwoodBound.org meant to be an ever-present site for any future things that Brentwood's bounding to do, or is that going to at some point go away?
My vision of it would be, it'd be a repository, it'd be a nice archival repository of the information. There's a lot of information on there, as you know, and, at some point, the area is not Brentwood bound, that's where the projects are, but I think,
Right.
once we, in the next year, once we, finish the flood mitigation, once we have opened the park, the park, and we have the greenway, completed, that, we will, transition that information.
So we haven't formally talked about it. However, recently, the discussion has always been that when the project is done, we will not be referring to Brentwood Bound anymore. It becomes Brentwood Park, or it becomes the Brentwood Destination Playground, unless we have someone that endows some funds to change that name. But I think
Manchester Road,
Manchester
yeah.
Road, and I know that the developer ultimately will hire someone to help them brand their project, the name of the project. But I think that maybe the committee wants to think about it. Now that we own the domain name, we should probably keep it.
Well, and that's why I was asking if that was an initial strategy of saying Brentwood Bound, meaning that it can it doesn't need to be just for that
Right.
project area.
Right.
Brentwood Bound can mean
the
other
next big
things, whatever
Brentwood
next
Bound
thing that
project.
Brentwood's
Whatever
going,
that is.
doing, right? So I think it is definitely something the committee could take up and discuss at some point, and have a strategy of whether it's either an end game for that, or how do we maintain and continue it? Because to continue to pay for the URL and the site and all of that, we just need to make sure that that's,
How much is it?
Really not
I mean,
that-
it's
yeah.
nominal, but,
Right. So Alderman Plufka was here when the Board of Aldermen had their strategic planning session, remember? And that there were a number of projects that were brought to the board for consideration. So those projects are still sitting on the shelf, waiting for funding, to implement. So the city, if the committee recommends and the board agrees, could always use Brentwood Bound for those other projects that are yet to be funded.
yeah, I mean, I think that it becomes kind of the comprehensive plan location for things that are coming to fruition from a comprehensive plan perspective, it almost kind of becomes that type of a spot. So it's interesting. It could be an interesting way to transition that. But great. I initially I was curious on the Parks and Recreation too, why it was such a separate thing, but it does make a lot of sense that they've got so many programs that they have to continually communicate about, that it's different than the city as an entity. But I do think it is a complete brand though, right? Any communication touch point that anyone, a resident or business sees, whether it comes from that or, like you said, Code Red. I mean, it's a communication point contributes to a perception of what our brand is, right? The macro brand of.
Which is why there is a constant discussion amongst the department directors and Janet when we're pushing any communication out on behalf of the city.
Great. Anything else in this document? Any other?
No, thanks for putting together such a good list. This was very helpful.
Great. Yeah, I was just looking to see if I had any other
I
comments.
wonder if it's not something you might consider making it a page on the website.
Oh, the, yeah.
What you produce for this meeting, and just make it a page on the
Yeah,
website
and
title
I-
it as something like, you
Yeah.
know, social media outlets or.
Assets.
And
you
we
know,
do have that.
assets.
We have it, it's in every of the polls. I have a full-page ad.
Yeah.
So, again,
Yeah.
We
keep
can do
hitting,
that.
keep hitting that with,
Yeah.
just putting that out there. But yeah, I think,
Yep.
and please, as you meet with your constituents, remind them, like, Alderman Gould, download the app, subscribe to the e-newsletter.
Right.
Here's how you can find things. The official city sources.
I want to recognize Alderwoman Tice is in the audience, so if there's anything from that presentation that you have comments on, you're welcome to jump up. So item 3 then, discussion of out-of-home signage. This was something that kind of came up a little bit with resident that had been listening in on the first meeting, kind of made a comment about making sure that we're really thoroughly leveraging opportunities for banners and out-of-home signage or billboards. We don't really have billboards, but we do have banners that we strategically put up in places that act as sort of
We
billboards.
do have a billboard in our town, or no, on the border of our town.
Is it on the border?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's right on the edge.
And we have
you know.
used that, we have used that
We have.
before.
I think we used it for Brentwood Bound
Yeah,
at one point, yeah.
It's an expense, so if we anticipate using that, we'll need to
We've
make sure we
used
budget.
sides of buildings for banners and things, but, the overarching kind of theme is that, how are we, what are we doing with, or how do we go about the process of developing that, coming up with where it goes, the messaging hierarchy, and even the design, who's doing the design work for the city in those cases. So that's kind of the questions that we have.
So I think, really Parks and Recreation would probably be the biggest user of banners, especially in places around Brentwood. The typical, 3 or 4 places where they typically place banners, and it's usually for some of their bigger events. So that department is responsible for making those banners happen.
So you as the communications manager don't have any oversight in developing?
Yeah, she does.
Okay.
She does connect with them and make sure that it meets the city's communication standards. When the city hired Arcturus, they developed standards and templates and design of fonts.
branding
The current
of the
branding.
city.
So we've just used that for other things that we've used. So those standards exist, and Janet does coordinate with them in any other department. But, until the city started having the street lights and street poles, we didn't have an opportunity to put banners anywhere. And yes, admittedly, we probably should have been doing it on a more regular basis. The ones along Litzinger that was celebrating the centennial stayed up for, maybe 2 years? So,
We love the centennial.
yeah.
Yes.
So I think we've had an opportunity, and we heard feedback from the board. So we have changed that. We celebrated, Business Saturday?
Seasonal, yes.
We're celebrating, reminding people you're in Brentwood when you're here. But after the new year, there's an opportunity to change out some of those signs and put new ones in. And, we go through the city's purchasing policy to select a vendor. And we have used, is it in graphics? Who have we used?
And graphics or fast signs.
Or fast
are
signs.
Typically, when banners are produced,
So we've used those, but in terms of design, and, you know, we've heard feedback also from Alderwoman Tice that the fonts can be bigger, should be bigger. I walked the same path as well, and so I could see it. However, we're listening to that feedback, and we can increase that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean
No,
to
go
jump
ahead.
in.
Yep.
Didn't Arcturus provide us with a sort of a model banner when they redid, when they looked at changing the street signage, when they looked at changing, this is all on Manchester Road, you know, with the resurfacing of Manchester Road, with the introduction of light poles, which look great, by the way. They also came up with this vertical pole, you know, that scale of signage that was more about a stylized B in a particular font, and it had like a gear, I want to say, or a leaf, or a both, and,
Right.
and it had colors involved and things like that. I want, are we going back to any of that to?
Once the streetlights and the project is done, then we'll be doing that.
Because I'll tell you, one of the things that people lament about Brentwood is that it tends to be a drive-through community with Brentwood Boulevard running right down the middle of 5 lanes going 50 miles an hour. It's hard to develop that sense of place, even though we've done some things in terms of the intersection right out here and other things to enhance that feeling. I'm wondering if we could, at the first of the year, talk about 2 different locations that might lend themselves to additional signage. And I'm talking about, we do this great tree lighting along Strassner on the south side, right as it comes into Brentwood Boulevard. And it's I don't know how many trees it is, 15 or 20 at least. And it's very beautiful. And I wonder if there is some creative way to develop some sort of signage that simply announces that, hey, you're coming into Brentwood. It would be mostly for the benefit of southbound traffic, obviously from where we located. The other one, the other location, and I remember us even entertaining a design of a fountain, is the green space to the north of the Walgreens at Litzinger. And I don't know if that's even property that we own
We
or
own it.
control.
The city owns it.
And I wonder if that's something that we ought not talk about after we get Manchester Corridor, you know, completed and resurfaced and things like that, that we don't talk about introducing some banners or colors, you know, the colors of the high school, what along Brentwood Boulevard, or some kind of signage to say, you know, you're in Brentwood. This is, you know, this is where we are. Something like that might help.
There was a design for a monument sign at that location.
And a small fountain, right?
So, exactly, I think Planning Design Studio may have developed that for the city, so we would need to take another look at the cost.
Sure.
And have a discussion, do we want to fund that? But yeah, when I reference all these plans and that we have, you know, on the drawing books or on the bookshelf, we can easily bring all of those out. It's a
There was
matter of
another one, I
funding.
think, at Hanley in Manchester.
Absolutely.
And then I think at high school.
At high school, we had multiple locations
That's right.
for them, so we can bring that back to the
renderings
committee
are
for a discussion.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I assume the Arcturus situation was prior to me being on the board, so I think, because I don't recall
Yes,
that.
it was.
So
It was prior
I'd be interested to get the results of that. If there was some sort of guidelines put together, I'd love to be able to see that. I think that's one of the concerns that I have heard from others, is that, you know, oftentimes the messaging is not very legible, or there isn't enough pop of color. I know, for example, one of the ones that I recalled was like a Summer Beats banner that was mostly black, and then it was kind of a small little circle in the middle, and you couldn't read the dates, you didn't know. And you look at some other municipalities, or even it might be the commerce that does certain things when businesses get together. For example, the Maplewood Food and Art Festival. You see a huge banner, and it tells you you're driving up, you see what it is and the dates, and like, you know, Maplewood branding is real small, but you know you're in, so I think we just need to really pay attention to the hierarchy of information and the design, and to that gets some elements of branding, to where, when does it warrant having a little bit more vibrant color, and when does it maybe something that's a little more understated.
So, you know, I think the discussion for the committee could be along, do you want to change the city's color? Because if you look at your business card, those colors you see on there are the same colors you see on park signage. So,
And it makes sense for park signage because it's kind of an earth tones and all of that, but, you know, I think,
green and red. But if you want to, and I think I've heard Alderwoman O'Neill talk about the Brentwood school colors, that maybe we would plant flowers that mimic those colors at the different monument signs. But, you know, this committee can take that on and we
Yeah,
can see where it goes.
that'd be great. Blaine, any follow-up on any of those?
No, naive question, what are the high school's colors or school's colors?
Purple and gold. Alderwoman Tice, I'll recognize you, absolutely.
Thank you. So I have brought this up and emailed, and I think what I've learned listening tonight is how complicated the communication role is, and how the vast amount of stuff that that goes on with this. And I think this is an example, sort of like, you know, I'll use our Parks and Rec department. You know, Eric's the head of Parks and Rec, but yet we don't expect him to do every single thing. And like, we have to go outside to design a playground, even though he manages the playground. And I think the signage is something that not everybody's an expert in graphic design. And if we're gonna go to the expense of making signs, maybe we need to go outside and do that. And I like this broader discussion about, maybe it's not, you know, are there colors? Is there something else that needs to be done, which would be a really interesting topic for this committee to take on. And then I too would be curious to see this beautiful fountain-ish stuff that was designed many years ago. It sounds like it would be an expensive
It was a great package.
endeavor, but it
was
might
beautiful.
be something to look at again and let us all dream of what could be.
Right.
Yeah, would it be possible for January to pull the Arcturus package?
Yeah.
And then, I know that wasn't all of it because it was design studio? No, what was the name of the?
Planning Design Studio.
Right. They're
Yes.
the ones that actually designed the monuments.
Right.
But but I remember them coming up with proposals for everything, including streetlights,
Oh, yeah.
signs, street signs, as
Yeah.
well as banners to hang.
Right, even the signs, the word Brentwood.
Right.
That would go on the tunnel, leading into the tunnel. So they were instrumental in developing all of that.
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah, and I think that when we get into this loftier discussion of what is the brand of Brentwood, and because I know that's come up on several committee meetings and board meetings, and I know, you know, Alderwoman O'Neill and others have brought that up. I think that's where we start to get into, you know, maybe it is looking at some of the work that already has been done, developing those guidelines, but, you know, it might be worth a discussion about, are there some additional amendments to those guidelines that need to be done in order to kind of create more of the templates, especially as we look into social media? That wasn't probably a really heavy push at the time. Now it is. So I just think it would be really, I'd love to see that. And then, and again, I echo Alderwoman Tice's sentiment that there is a lot for Janet to handle. And it's good that the Parks Department has somebody as well. I just want to make sure that we're set up with
Right.
communicating.
We do bring in consultants.
Yeah.
We don't take it on our own.
Great. Next on the agenda is item 4. This is something that a resident actually had brought forward, and it's interesting because I had recalled seeing some digital signage, I believe at Richmond Heights. So the question was, when you're in the community, inside the community center, there's a really nice screen that kind of rotates through different activities and events coming up and everything, but that outside, unless you're really paying attention to the social media channels or some of the other outlets, you kind of miss that. Or if you don't go into the community center, you never see it. So I asked Bola if we could put this on for discussion as far as advancements of digital signage and how it's being used. Is it something that we'd have to actually take in consideration with an ordinance amendment or anything like that? Is it something we'd want to even consider? So Bola, are you?
So I asked Whitney, because this would fall under planning and zoning or planning and development, to put a memo together, which is in board docs. And, I wanted her, we know it's prohibited right now, but I wanted her to help you all understand what the process would be if you want to change that. So it would go through Planning and Zoning Commission for a recommendation of a text amendment, and we would do all the notices in the paper for the public, and then it would come to the board for approval of the revisions to the city's sign regulation. I do provide a survey that was done several years ago. I updated it this afternoon. I don't have all the responses from every city, but taking a look at that, you get a sense of those who allow it, where they allow it, and those who do not.
Interesting. Obviously, we don't want to have. I think what you see in most of municipalities that have it is it's allowed on a conditional basis or very restricted basis.
Very restricted basis, yes.
So.
Question? How static does a sign have to be to not be construed as dynamic? In other words, if it's lit by LED lighting, but the message doesn't move or change or swirl or do anything, it's just a static message, and then once a day maybe it's changed to keep it updated, is that still considered dynamic signage?
I think the general definition, it would be if you're able to bring up the description that Richmond Heights provides. Theirs is very specific. The signs must be programmed to provide only a static display from dusk to 10 p.m. and shall be turned off between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Animation limited to a duration of 2 seconds, followed by a static display of at least 8 seconds. No flashing, blinking, or strolling text is permitted. So you could build language to restrict it as much or less as you want. I think City of Kirkwood, they have not provided an update. However, theirs is similar in that signs cannot be displayed from 10 a.m. to 6 a.m. in residentially zoned areas. So we would need to look at all the different zoning districts and what you want to allow or not, and the distance, between commercial and residential areas.
Did you, by any chance, talk with Eric about any potential of an exterior signage and whether or not the Parks Department, because of the programming, would see value in something like that?
I didn't talk to him recently, but I believe that came up. That came up many years ago during 2014, 2015, when we were doing the renovation of the community center. I don't really remember right now what his thought is, but we could ask him again and have him come to the next meeting and share a little bit of that.
Yeah, it's certainly something that you don't want to become Times Square, right? You need to make sure that we are restricting it to a place because if we start to open it up and allow it everywhere, and like some of these cities have, allow it no matter what, it looks like, you'll have businesses that'll want to put them up. And so I think we have to, if we are going to entertain this idea of allowing our ordinance to at least have some conditional use of these types of signage, because the technology has changed, and it's no longer just this just gaudy light bulb kind of thing. It actually, and I'm sure you've seen some of the billboards, dynamic billboards along the highway, that the illumination is a lot less, and they're able to show a lot more content. So I think it is something, as we look to an evolving signage future, we should consider some of this.
An interesting question would be with how much money is spent on the types of signs that we just talked about, how much of that could be mitigated by putting in a sign like you're talking about, not going the cheap option, but going the effective option, and what that could do if there would be any sort of long-term cost savings or anything like that. Also, would an ordinance change, if there was an ordinance change on this, would it allow businesses to do the same, or could it just be for the city government?
No, we would need to allow everybody. Once you open it up for the
Okay.
city, it's everybody.
Okay.
Correct.
So it seems to me that the Richmond Heights model makes the most sense. In other words, in describing what's going to be allowed in terms of how much movement, the frequency and all that kind of stuff. And then I think even getting into the weeds, so to speak, or the details, so to speak, of, wattage, brightness, those kinds of things too.
LED pitch.
Yeah. Terms I don't even, but I mean, but I think it's useful to regulate it to that point, such that you don't, you still have that efficacy of having a place like, I'm thinking of the monument that currently is the monument for the rec center. If that was somehow converted into, it would also be a display. It's a great location. It's not near any homes. It's not going to be disruptive from that standpoint. But it would be a natural place for people to think as they're driving through, oh, that's going on in Brentwood next week. That's, recycling is Saturday. Okay. Or things like that.
Yeah, no, I think it's certainly an interesting idea, and I think that gets to the point too, where you're talking about out-of-home placement opportunities.
Right.
That might be a layer to that, is if we were to adopt an ordinance to allow this, where would the city more ideally see that? Is it where you're talking about and modify the existing monument sign, or is it at the corner in front of Walgreens?
Didn't Walgreens originally want a dynamic sign at their location?
I
And
think
we-
so,
and
yes.
This is going back to P&Z
Yes,
days.
many
but-
years, yeah.
Right, but we just had said, hey, we're not going to allow it.
Because the ordinance denied,
Right,
didn't allow them
right.
at all.
It wasn't because just the ordinance just denied it. I don't think the city was willing to change the ordinance
Sure.
at that time.
that's
So it was the
true.
mindset.
Yep.
And at that time, I'm sure the signage, the displays themselves were not as appealing. So I think technology has advanced to a place where I feel comfortable that we can at least engage in this conversation and consider it. And I'd also be interested to know too, could that be some, revenue opportunities for advertising or anything, for any of our, like West Community Credit Union, when they host an event, is there some sort of ability to have that? So what I like about the potential of it is similar to, Janet, how you spoke about social media, is that you're able to pretty inexpensively and rapidly change your messaging and or even change the hierarchy of how it's shown and sort of update that, and a lot more cost-effective than a printed signage that you want to have to maybe tear down and replace, so.
If there's feedback that folks can't read the sign, it's easier to change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. I don't know, do you need any action on that?
Yeah, so what's the direction? What's the next steps on
What do you
on
guys,
this?
what's the committee feeling?
Take it up next month and it's an
Bring it
actual-
back?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's just my thought, is to bring it back.
Want to have do you want to bring it back as a potential of an amended ordinance, or just as a discussion?
I think it's got to start with the amended ordinance, because the issue is going to be, you know, if we do it on Brentwood Boulevard, I can think of a couple of different applications immediately that are going to want to join in and do that, and we're going to have to be mindful of that. And you know, and so maybe the next step isn't the ordinance. Maybe the next step is to get some kind of presentation on what the technology looks like, if that's possible. You know what I mean? If it truly is more sophisticated.
Or even an audit of how some of these other municipalities, what their signs look like and how they're
Right.
using them. Just so
Right.
we have a sense, a visualization.
So I can't guarantee that we can bring this back in January.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because Whitney would be doing
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
And she has the design guidelines she's also gonna be working on. But
Sure.
we'll do our best and provide an update on where we are. But I think we can at least have someone come talk about the technology as a starting point.
Yeah, and I think some of these that, again, some of these other municipalities that have provided a restricted allowance to them, it would be good to know from them, when they made these changes, what did they receive from businesses? And, you know, was there a lot of interest in other people doing it, or was it just, you know, restricted to the city's application, or what?
I think if we have, I mean, if we have a couple more conversations about this, it's going to lead to more and more questions, and we're going to flush a lot of stuff out because, I mean, my head is already spinning with, I mean, you know, when I guarantee when all these other municipalities did this type of work, they probably said, "Oh, I wish I would have." And so if we had some time to also get that feedback from them, what do you wish you would have done? It would probably be beneficial.
So I only got feedback from like 4 today. So I need to give them holidays, more time to provide feedback so you all can have a more robust discussion.
So probably not January's meeting, maybe February discussion. Great. And then last item on new business, the potential technical issues of live streaming services or any other hardware or software discussion that we might need. I know that oftentimes recently, and we can probably pinpoint exactly the issue that came up for all of those situations, but either residents that were trying to listen in couldn't hear, or it was choppy feedback, or, you know, just starts and stops of live feeds. And so I think it was more of a discussion on the technical issues and making sure that we have hardware and software as best as it can be.
Well, we have Larry Covey here.
Asked to address this concern about possible technical issues. I put many more details in the memo that's out there on board docs, but ultimately we were given some examples, and one of the first things we picked up on was microphone placement to where the speaker is. Sometimes it was, you know, they're directional. There's a cone that comes out of the mic. It was pointed above speaker's head, or the speaker was maybe 2 feet or more away from the microphone. We've been following back up with Janet, and just today Janet provided us some feedback over the last couple weeks, you know, looking at these videos that are out there on YouTube, and every issue, if I'm right, Janet, was either, I think someone's mic was off at one point, so they didn't have the mic on, and there was another instance where they were probably standing too far away from the microphone. And basically what'll happen, the system, so for instance, there was a help desk ticket open where Mayor Dimmitt gave exact, you know, it was the Ways and Means Committee from December 1st. It was 45 minutes into the video, and sure enough, for a 60-second time period, the city administrator was cutting in and out. And after watching the video and verifying it, to me, it seemed, you know, it was one of those issues with optimal mic placement and not really speaking into the mic or loud enough. And the system was just having a hard time picking up her voice. So we had that. Another issue I know that has came up some in the last few months. Some of you know we're having issues with our AT&T fiber into this building. And when it first started, which was, and it continues to happen periodically, when it first started, it was in September, and we didn't have I'll call it a backup or failover in place for it. And so if you remember, there was a Board of Aldermen meeting, we couldn't even live stream because we happened to have a fiber outage at that night. Um, since then, we tried to rectify it by taking advantage of a very slow connection we have in this building. It's only 10 meg, but we do have it failing when it goes out. It fails over to this 10 meg connection. And for people working from their desk, you know, getting access to files and things like that, it works. But if there's a meeting that night and you try to live stream over 10 mega bandwidth, it's performance issues the whole time. One of the things that we got approved by Ways and Means to add to our fiscal year 23 budget, we're upgrading our bandwidth. Truthfully, it's secondary bandwidth into this building. We've had a walkthrough with Charter at this point, and while we don't have an exact date from them yet, we're hoping by the end of January to have that connection in to have as a backup connection. So of
Redundancy,
AT&T, it's more of a redundant connection. The other thing we've done, we have contacted Schiller's Audio Video, which actually is the company that originally installed this system in this room, and we're still trying to get on their schedule to come out and just look over all the hardware and all the software configuration to make sure they can't find any issues. If they do, of course, we'll address it at that time, but to date, you know, the only ticket recently was the one from December 1st. One of the things I would like to ask is anytime we have a good example of it, to put up the help desk ticket in. Really, it's as easy as email. Someone just emails helpdesk@brentwoodmo.org, tell me the date and the time, and we'll see, you know, did we have an AT&T fiber issue at that time? Could it be just placement of the microphone? I'd like to at least follow up on it and try and see, since, you know, it seems to be, at least in the last few months, I've heard more and more about possible, you know, live streaming issues.
And as far as the microphones go, I mean, I'm sure there's technology out there that auto recognizes that somebody's talking and then turns on the microphone. Is that something that we've
That's what
looked
these
at?
do.
Is there reasons we maybe
These
don't?
they're gated, they're called. They'll actually raise and lower along with the speakers in here, depending on where the speaker's coming from. It helps with feedback, from reducing feedback. It really has to do with, I mean, there's no microphone that's going to pick up 2 feet away from the mic, and then, like I said, these basically have a cone that comes out. And if it's pointed over your head, there's a good chance that the quality of that is just not going to be as good. We put this system in 2018, if I remember right. 2018, yeah, it was 2018, 2019. So I would say it's fairly new as far as technology goes. It's definitely something I can ask Schiller's. You know, is there a microphone upgrade to maybe help with that? But I think ultimately people should make a habit of adjusting the mic every time they sit down. I'm bad about it walking up to this podium.
Ola's user error, is that what you're saying?
I have one example, and
That's what
might
I
have said-
think.
yeah, I have one
Oh,
example.
Ola's fault? Yeah, well, I think that's the consensus of what we just heard.
She is talking into the mic.
I'll
and
stop talking.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that hearing that we've approved the redundancy, that should help with any lag issues for people doing the live stream, and then it sounds like it's potentially a bit of some training or looking at upgrading of the microphones to make sure that sensitivities are enough, and follow up on that. I think it's good to know that they're all manageable situations.
Okay.
Great,
All right,
thank you.
thanks.
Okay, item I, citizen comments. Anybody online or anyone else?
There's no one online?
Okay. Any other business?
No.
Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned.